right, welcome everyone. I'm pleased to kick off the AI Workforce Summit with a very special guest. Aaron Levie is here, the co-founder and CEO of Box. Aaron, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, Kraig.
So, we've both been in the industry for quite a while. We were part of ushering in the cloud in the mid-2000s when you were starting Box. It was a new model for enterprise software. It was a huge platform shift. But this is perhaps the biggest thing we've seen yet. Gen AI burst onto the scene 18 months ago. And for us as software professionals, we were discussing what's the impact on enterprise software? 2023 kind of became the year of the AI Copilot. Everybody kind of announcing these features right along the software writing shotgun with the human workforce, making them more productive. But 2024 is really the year of the AI worker, software that can accomplish the jobs of humans or tasks. And it's really caused us to think, what is the future? So first question for you, when did you see this trend emerging and what's making you so excited about its impact on the industry?
Yeah, so I realistically probably started seeing it at the second half of last year, and I think you captured the timeline really well. If I sort of even zoom out a little bit, I think for about a decade we were talking about AI models, and AI models being able to do very discrete, kind of single tasks, label this image, autocomplete a sentence, the GPT-2, early GPT-3 era. Then obviously with ChatGPT, we got the initial inklings of kind of AI assistance where I'd communicate back and forth in an ongoing dialogue, or you'd have a kind of a co-pilot-esque dynamic where it's sort of, sitting alongside me, helping, again, still auto-completion type tasks. But what I think, the ecosystem eventually figured out, you guys included, is wait a second, if we don't just use the AI model as really a kind of a database where you're asking a question, getting an answer back, but instead really a reasoning engine or almost a brain, and we're giving it and feeding it possible not only tasks but information and tools that it can use, well, all of a sudden you can actually turn these things into agents. And so we've kind of gone from AI models to AI assistants to now AI agents. And we're, quite literally in, day one of that. I think the actual agents at scale in the world right now is probably measured by a very, very low number. But I think in 3 or 5 or 10 years from now, we'll look back and realize this was the start of a new wave of software where actually, software is kind of providing work alongside it as opposed to, just helping answer questions or helping enable you to do work. It's actually going to deliver labor itself inside the software.
So you're right. You're spot on. We are in day one. I think companies are they're starting to see what AI can do for tech support. They're starting to see what AI can do for frontline sales reps or paralegals or recruiters or content producers. And it's kind of bending all of our minds, but kind of going back to the cloud and this last major tectonic shift that you were part of, given your experience kind of ushering companies through that mega change, how do you think this AI worker, AI agent movement is going to play out? What similarities or differences do you see to the cloud?
Yeah, I think, and this is probably a liability, but I do tend to think about patterns through just a kind of Clay Christensen-esque dynamic of low-end disruption, which is there's a new technology, it's bad at some things, it's good at other things. What is the axis in which that technology is really good and performs better? And then which axis is it performing worse at? And will that axis improve over time? And so you kind of look at, let's say cloud as an analogy. Cloud, when it first emerged, let's not even say SaaS, let's just say cloud infrastructure for kind of, let's say AWS. The axis it was super good at was very flexible compute infrastructure. So I could deploy it, I could scale it up, I could scale it down. What it was bad at was having all of the capabilities, all the security, all of the infrastructure kind of robustness of a traditional data center at the point when it was first introduced in the kind of 05, 06. SaaS, similarly, I think had that same dynamic. When Salesforce first launched, it probably looked like a worse or simpler Siebel. But the variable that it was really good at was you could deploy it in a 3 or 5 or 10 person team or a small business. And it was like the best CRM ever for that size company, because now for the first time ever, that size company could have an actual CRM system as opposed to hiring Accenture and having a full kind of deployment inside your data center of Siebel. So I look at AI through that same kind of, and then naturally what happens is is, Salesforce invests more engineers, builds more features. Eventually, actually, the axis of that simplicity gets more and more advanced. It still starts simple, but it can be more robust. And all of a sudden, it kind of overtakes the kind of incumbent. And, cloud computing did the exact same thing. Starts out simple, dev test workloads, people using it to build micro apps, or small startups would use it. But then ultimately it had more and more features. It became more scalable. It could support the largest workloads in the world. And then it became the dominant computing platform. So if you kind of think about SaaS had that trend and trajectory, cloud had that trend and trajectory. And then do we see this in AI and AI agents? And I would argue yes, because the same, kind of similar axes are at play, which is right now, what we think of as best in class AI, let's say GPT-4 or Gemini, it can do something super well. It can answer questions about contracts. It can answer a single, customer support inquiry. It can generate an email. But the more complex the task, the kind of worse it'll be. It'll get confused. It'll do the wrong thing after kind of 3 or 4 iterations of that task. So we know that the models have to improve. We know that it has to get cheaper, because sometimes you need to be able to have the AI model do multiple things. And so it's not just like a single question, single answer. So we got to run it through the AI model multiple times. So we need the cost to come down, and we need to be able to continue to scale it up. So it's sort of worse at very complex tasks that you want to do, at scale, but it's really, really good at simpler tasks that you're just starting out with. And so I think AI will follow that same trend, which is you're starting to see the very early phases of what it's going to be good at. But for a fact that it's going to get cheaper, higher quality, better, and more scalable because of you just extrapolate the curve that we're on. And I think that will follow then the same exact kind of disruption curve that cloud or SaaS or PCs, even kind of went through. And so the initial tasks are, again, like limited amounts of complex workflows, but still where you have to generate some degree of text or an answer or a customer communication or reviewing a document or processing an invoice. It's really good at that. Completing the entire business process, the entire workflow with 99.999% accuracy, still probably not, we're not there. But again, that's exactly why it starts as a low-end disruptor. It means it works better at some things. You're not going to scale it for everything yet, but that you can ride this technology curve, and it's going to get better and better and better. It's going to get cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. It's going to get higher quality over time.
You guys sell to the Fortune 500, right? You're out talking to CIOs and the C-suite of the Fortune 500. And for some reason, this mega trend feels a little bit different. Like enterprises seem to be leaning in and wondering, like, how do I need to change my business? Because it's going to take a while. What are you seeing happen in large enterprises with respect to AI workers and agents?
Yeah, I think, you have this benefit of you have an existing crop of, let's say, technology leaders or even people in business that now within one generation have already seen multiple eras of disruption in their enterprise. That wasn't necessarily true within SaaS. The internet did happen, and that was pretty disruptive, but that was less of an internal operational shift and much more of a kind of customer facing dynamic of distribution and marketing. And so because you have IT leaders and business leaders that experienced kind of pre-SaaS, post-SaaS, or pre-cloud, post-cloud, all of a sudden, it's the same people in charge now that are seeing AI happen, and they see how much shifted because of the cloud transformation or the SaaS transformation. And I think that means that they're more prepared strategically, mentally, operationally for, okay, a new technology disruption is emerging. How do we respond to it? And they have the capacity, they have the talent to try and respond. So I still would bet on SMBs adopting agents at scale first, to be clear, but there is less reluctance, less conservatism or let's say skepticism of AI than what we saw with the initial phases of cloud for a large enterprise, simply because they saw that cloud became real, SaaS became real, it became the dominant standard. And I think that you have large enterprises not wanting to miss out when that also happens with AI.
So which departments or roles within an organization do you think are the best suited for AI workers or AI agents today? And why do you think, why are those roles really well suited for this type of disruption today?
Yeah, so I think that there's probably a couple different axes to think about this on. It's sort of like, what is the for lack of a better term, interface in which people communicate with that particular type of work or labor. So if the interface is you're always talking to somebody via chat or email, then you have a very good kind of interface in which, AI can respond to things, and to the end consumer, it's not obvious that something has changed, or maybe even the convenience has increased as a result of that. So that's sort of one dynamic. You have another dynamic, which is there a type of work where you're kind of largely sitting at a computer screen, reviewing things, typing things, generating text of some sort. And is there a way for AI agents not to replace what you're doing, but to augment what you're doing to make it so you can do it even faster? And so I'd say I just described probably two totally different categories of work, but both of which offer great opportunity for AI to become a huge point of leverage. So on one hand, obviously, I think we have come to expect the idea that, if a customer comes to your website and just wants this, figure out what's the pricing for, my size company and what product would I be most interested in, that it's a far better convenient experience if the customer can get an instant answer back to that. And you'll probably generate a faster lead, when you can reduce the barrier to having that conversation or asking that question. Similarly, if you have an existing customer that just is like, I need my password reset, or the software's not working, or something about the system is down, again, that sort of time to resolution, that time to answer matters more than kind of almost any other variable to that customer. And so another great example where AI can really augment the work that people are doing. So that's kind of a, let's say a B2C kind of component. And then you have internal operations, which lend themselves well to AI, which is, we've seen the most classic one, which is, let's say, GitHub Copilot. GitHub Copilot is brilliant because you have a workforce that other than when they're collaborating with other people, verbally or in any other kind of situation, they're typing lines of text in a computer terminal, and you can basically bring the world's intelligence to that process by typing that text faster in the form of AI intelligence helping you write code. And so it's kind of like the perfect, it's kind of like the perfect dynamic, which is like the interface is like a linear interface. The sort of knowledge of coding is very prevalent on the internet in the form of open source and lots of code libraries and Stack Overflow information. And so that's kind of like why I think GitHub Copilot has been the killer app of AI. But things get more complicated the less your work looks like that. So, lawyers, I would say, is a great example of a lot of potential, but there's a lot of back and forth with an external client or counterparty. There's a lot of like information that they have to, pull in from another human. There's a lot of collaboration with other parties. So I think there's areas where AI offers a lot of leverage, like let's review a contract very quickly, give me the clauses that I need to improve from this. But at the end of the day, you're still going to go back to the client. You're going to have to go explain it to them. And so you can't fully automate that work, anytime soon, at least. So I think you're going to see a continuum of kind of like, how often is that task kind of executed in a business? Is it executed, 1 time a day, 10 times a day, 100 times a day, 1,000 times a day? How much information is sort of involved in that task? How many people need to kind of be involved in it? How sort of autonomous is it as a task? And I think all of those variables will then, drive how much AI can automate or augment that work right now.
Yeah, I think some people are calling when AI just performs a specific task, like, find me all the contracts in my contract repository with customers that have this unique clause and bring them to my CRO, right? Now, somebody used to have to go do that. It used to take 4 hours. Now, like, that task can be given to like an agent. And in some cases, as you mentioned, like an entire job role might get replaced with the AI. Like I think I'm kind of calling those AI workers. So you mentioned the example of the tier 1 tech support person, which is like, I forgot my password, reset my username. It looked like all the basic stuff that you just look in the knowledge base and get an answer back to a customer. Like, that's probably going to be the work that gets kind of displaced by AI sort of first, because the AI can do like that job perfectly, or the frontline sales rep, as you mentioned, or things like that. But what do you think companies are going to do with all these efficiency gains and productivity gains they get by hiring AI workers and bringing AI agents onto their teams? What are they going to do?
Well, I think, this is I think there's a way that you could look at everything I've said thus far and be sort of worried for the workforce. I kind of like the human workforce, which is I think the more important workforce. I actually take the opposite lens, and I think that I think history has proven that this is the case, time and time again with technology productivity gains. With an asterisk that this will not be true of every individual firm. It's more of a kind of a macro view. But because every firm might make a different decision on what to do with that productivity gain. But I think, by default, my view is in areas of your business where you get productivity improvements, and let's take like the most obvious, easiest productivity improvement of all time to understand, at least mentally, is like, let's say sales rep productivity, which is like I spend $1 on sales rep salary. How many dollars do I get out on the ultimate, ROI or revenue generated? And like, that's that's at least classically one of the more, isolated ways that you can look at productivity. It's very hard in engineering. It's very hard in marketing, but sales rep productivity is like, one of the more classic areas. If I'm just speaking for Box right now, but I think this extends to most companies. If I can, pay $1 and get back $2, I might be willing to spend a certain amount of dollars to get the $2. If I can pay $1 and get $2.50, I'm probably going to spend more money on the dollar side, on the investment side, because the return has just gone up dramatically for that dollar invested. And I think what people think of initially, your reaction is, well, if you spend $1 and you get $2.50 back, then you'll just spend over time that same dollar and you'll just get the $2.50. And I think most people that participate in capitalism kind of say, well, wait a second, actually, like that $2.50, I want as many of those as possible because that might clear a new threshold where the ROI is so positive that I should keep investing as many dollars as I can until that basically productivity number goes back down. And so my instinct is in most areas where you see productivity gains, what you'll actually see is reinvestment back into the business. Now, sometimes that will be reinvestment back into technology and AI because it's just working so well, you just want more of that. But oftentimes in the business, as you're growing, you still eventually will then need, humans to go do all the things that AI can't do. And that's where I'm actually pretty optimistic, which is if I could generate X more leads per dollar, using an AI platform, I'm probably going to hire more sales reps on the other end of that workflow where I was previously constrained because the dollars invested in my lead gen system were taking up a lot of my dollars and it was only X level, X percent productive. But now if it's more productive, I'm going to actually need more sales reps to handle all those leads. And I think the same thing is true for engineers. If I can, generate 20% more code per dollar of engineering work, I'm going to eventually have more features that I'm building, which eventually, if I'm doing my job, should mean more revenue for the company. And if I have more revenue for the company, I'm going to want more features again, and those dollars will again go back into engineering. So I think in at a macro level, I think that most of this ultimately results in the productivity gains or efficiency gains going back into the business to drive more growth, more ingenuity, more creativity, as opposed to just being harvested. I think what an economist might look at is like, well, that'll just get harvested as more profit. The problem with that flaw with that is that nobody's in a static environment. So if you're harvesting those profits, you're going to have a competitor that says, no, I don't need to harvest the profits. I'm going to grow faster. So you won't be able to have, sort of a ridiculous level of profit as a result of AI because everybody's in a competitive space and we will compete out those profits over time. So again, this is kind of why I think ultimately the human side of this equation is ultimately, probably actually thrives in this model because it gets us from doing maybe the, more, rote work, and we get to now do a little bit more incrementally creative work as a result of this.
Yeah, we saw, speaking of the competition, we saw with the cloud movement, we saw a little bit of FOMO, right? As like your competitor was kind of moving into this like new architecture. But with AI, I think we're seeing some serious FOMO. Yep. And so we have companies taking action, which is kind of why we're here at this summit, talking about the future of the workforce and what it looks like. Do you see companies taking action? 2023, I think, was a year of paralyzation where everybody was wondering, what do I do? Is this thing safe? What are the rules? What's my competitor doing? But what's happening in 2024? What are you seeing?
Yeah, I think that we're definitely seeing absolutely more action than 2023. I would say that I think this still pales in comparison to a couple years from now, and the reason why, ironically, actually, the rate of change in the industry is because it's actually so fast. It actually causes customers or companies to really have to be very thoughtful about architecture decisions. It actually pays. There's a even higher premium right now to making the right architecture bets on the right platforms, because if you just dive in to the first thing that you hear about, it's you get any odds that thing is the wrong architecture or the wrong platform that will not actually accrue to get all of the accruing benefits of AI. And so I do think that's what we saw last year. Is a lot of people step back and say, you know what, it's probably a little bit too soon to bet on one AI platform because I'm hearing about this OpenAI thing. Google's all getting their act together. This Anthropic thing's very cool. And so what do I bet on? And now, a year later, you're seeing that, okay, I kind of see the contours of the industry sort of shaping up. And so I'm willing to now make an investment and start to get, some of these gains. But I still think we're earlier than we're like almost last year's kind of a wash. I think it's almost like this is the first year where you can actually dive in, which means that probably next year things will be 5 times more mature in terms of where things have settled out. But I think this is a moment and this is always true of technology transitions. This is a moment where your architecture matters a ton and who you bet on it matters a ton. Obviously, like if you made a CRM decision in like 2003, it may not have been 100% obvious which direction you should go in. But the people that, let's say, chose Salesforce got all of the compounding benefits of the entire super cycle of cloud and SaaS. But, you make one wrong decision there, and you might be stuck for 5 years on the wrong architecture. And I think that companies are sort of realizing they actually have to make the right decisions in this point in time, which does, lead to a little bit more evaluation, a little bit more trying to figure out what the future looks like. But this is definitely the year where we're first, seeing these types of deployments.
Yeah, it's really happening. It's pretty crazy. Let's talk about Box for a second. Last I heard, you guys had 110 plus thousand customers, something like that. Am I directionally sort of right?
Yep.
Who are your workers? And when you think about bringing, AI into the Box platform in the form of an AI agent or an AI worker, like what does that mean for your software? How are you thinking about it?
Yeah, so we're big believers in this, kind of based on the premise of your initial questions, which is if you think about, what are all the things that you could actually do with content? So we're a platform that helps enterprises manage their content. So think contracts, marketing assets, invoices, financial documents, HR records, all of that. The most important content in your enterprise, you're going to want to secure. You're going to want to manage effectively, integrated across your software. And all that content has a tremendous amount of value in it, but it's largely untapped by most organizations. And so our sort of view is, well, what if you had an intelligent platform that let you actually get more value from that information? Your question earlier about show me all the contracts with a particular criteria, that right now in most organizations could be like a 5-hour process at best. It might be like a multi-month process at worst, if your data is just fragmented across, everywhere. Well, what if it could become like a 1-second process? What would you need to do or have done in a kind of intelligent content management system that could cause it so you could ask any question and get an answer back from your data? Or where you take, all of your marketing assets or all of your sales information or all of your product data, and you let employees just ask a question of that information and get an answer back, as opposed to get a link to a file that then they have to go read and maybe spend an hour of their day just trying to find one specific answer. So this is the potential of AI plus enterprise content. And so our view is that you need to be able to have a platform that makes that incredibly easy to do. And so we're building that platform. That's Box AI. And it lets you ask questions of your data. It'll let you, not yet, but our sort of direction is very similar to this conversation, is let you automate workflows where AI agents are often reviewing content, extracting data, making, to some extent decisions about the process that content should go through, An invoice is above a certain amount, that should route to one person. A contract has this particular language in it, that should route to a different person. So we believe AI agents will do a lot of that type of work. And the amazing thing is, I think for our business and for a lot of other SaaS platforms out there, I'd say 95% of the use cases that customers come to us for with AI are not use cases that humans today are doing in that business. So this is not that there's some, group of people, there's 100 people out there doing all this work and AI is going to go replace that. It's actually all of the work that we never got around to because it just fell below the line. It was just like the thing that took too long, or the ROI was just not optimized for, I can throw, a 6-figure employee at this problem. It's not valuable enough. But could I throw $50 of AI compute at that problem? Absolutely. And so this is what AI begins to unlock, is like all of the stuff that we never got around to, all of the reviewing of contracts or getting our data cleaned up, or being able to ask questions of information that right now people are just going into a Slack channel and asking a question on. AI begins to be able to do all of that, which means that we just get more, again, productivity for the actual human employees in the organization. So that's what we're excited about.
Yeah, 2024, we're here in July, and we're seeing inning one of the AI workforce upon us. AI customer support reps on the front lines, AI inside sales reps, the examples you mentioned with Box around AI operations or AI analysts. We're talking about AI paralegals. We haven't even talked about recruiting,
right,
and sourcing candidates. There are so many examples, and I think it's captivating people's minds, which is why we're all here at this summit. But I know you don't have a crystal ball, Aaron, but you're pretty good at kind of seeing what the future looks like in the next couple of years. So as you look out now on 2 years from now or 3 years from now, what's the world going to look like, and how fast do you think we're going to see all this progress?
Yeah, the problem with any crystal ball stuff these days is, like, if you had asked that question in October of 2022, my answer would have aged, within a month as like the dumbest answer of all time. So I'd be talking about like VR, AR as like, the only thing that matters. And so I'd say it's very hard to predict anything at this point. We're on an exponential curve, and that you can kind of try and extrapolate from an exponential curve, but then there's crazy step functions that sort of exceed even the exponent that you were on. So if I just take if I take today's curve without any knowledge of a step function or kind of complete asymmetric shift, then you can at least a few things are true. Your AI models get vastly more intelligent. That matters because that means that it can make you can bring more reasoning to more basically workflows. And so, let's say you have a case of an AI agent answering customer questions wrong 5% of the time. Well, as AI reasoning goes up, you can just see that number will shrink. And so, probably if that number is 5% today, it'll probably be like 0.1% in 3 years from now. So just that's where the exponential shift in AI quality of the models goes. You have another component, which is the cost of compute continues to drop, mostly because of GPU performance going up and AI model efficiency improving. And so that means that if today a task with AI costs, $2 to complete that task, you can just kind of, squint and see that it'll probably cost like 10 cents in 3 years. So just think about what that opens up when you have a 90 or 95% reduction in underlying cost of what you're doing. So you have let's say a 20x improvement in costs, an X% increase in model quality. That just opens up way more use cases where AI right now might look like a toy, but you just continue to march up that curve of more and more complex use cases because the technology is cheaper, it's more robust, and it's higher quality. And I think that we're already on that curve, and so in 3 years you'll just see 100 times more agents in the world doing work than what we have today.
Well, the PC movement was exciting, the cloud, SaaS, mobile, social media, but I think all that pales in comparison to how exciting it is in the tech industry right now. Aaron, I want to thank you so much for joining us today at the AI Workforce Summit. I really appreciate it being here.
Good to be here. And this is like the final movement I can participate in. So like I can't have any more technology shifts in my lifetime. So like I hope this is just the final one.
Let's make it count.
It's been crazy. So
all right, thanks a lot, Aaron.
Thanks, Kraig.